And now we would like to welcome Stephen Matley for our final plenary of the conference. It is entitled, If We Do Not Consciously Include, We Will Unconsciously Exclude, How to Create a Culture of Shared Values. Stephen Matley, a high school dropout turned entrepreneur, thrives on adversity. From South Seattle's housing projects, he entered the workforce at 15, acutely aware of resource scarcity. With diverse roles in firms and corporations, he honed leadership skills. In 2014, he founded SM Diversity, promoting workplace diversity and inclusion. By connecting businesses with experts and recruiters, Stephen broadens access to diverse talent, enriching the marketplace. Acknowledged as a thought leader, he earned accolades from Forbes and Seattle Magazine alongside Jeff Bezos and Kevin Johnson. His TED Talks on organizational behavior and inclusive leadership highlight global impact. Initiatives like Hack Diversity and Inclusion benefit nonprofits. With continual growth in mind, he completed Cornell's Strategic Human Resource Leadership Program and the Business Certificate Program at the University of Washington. As a partner advisor to startups, he empowers entrepreneurs in underserved communities. Stephen, I'm going to welcome you to the virtual stage, and then I will let you take it over.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Hello to everyone out there virtually. Thank you to Lauren again for that introduction and all the community members involved with the UW Medicine Behavioral Health Institute. This has been wonderful to be able to be part of this. So thank you. As you heard in the introduction, you know, kind of our backstory of how we got here. I appreciate that. And just hearing that over again makes me reflect a lot about the journey. So today, you know, selfishly, I hope that you get something out of this as I talk about Employee 27 and how it helped me get out and on this entrepreneurial track that I am here today. While we're thinking and while we're talking about this, you might hear me talk about values. And so in the feed, if you would like to share, please do. You're encouraged to do that. And there will be people monitoring the chats. But what is value, or what do you value? And what does that mean to you? Let's go back to kind of where it all started. You know, I want to kind of share a little bit about my background. Here you have myself as the kid growing up in the South Side Seattle. Right there is the only family photo that I have of my father and mother together. My dad is Lao, Indonesian Muslim. My mother is Lao, Buddhist. I am a seed of refugees. That is also a picture of my sister as well. That's actually my grandparents, my sister. We didn't grow up with each other because when my parents got divorced at 2, she was taken custody by my father. But, you know, my parents, as I said, I'm a seed of refugees, were refugees. They actually had to leave their homeland in Laos to come to America due to war. It was very hard growing up in the United States of America with parents that were refugees, especially their parents, my mom's father and mother. My actually grandfather is a concentration, so let me take that back, a death concentration camp survivor. He was facing death because of his identities and the values that he stood up for. He had to attempt escaping twice to gain his freedom from the communist death concentration camp during the time. I actually have a necklace that he gave me, and so I'd like to thank my grandfather and grandmother for a lot of the things that they've gone through as well. But, you know, you heard me talk about Stephen and the introduction as Stephen. How did I get even that name? You see, going back further, when my father and mother were married, my real name is actually Mouhammat. And on the UW TEDx was where I was able to kind of talk about this. When my parents got divorced, my mother was ashamed of my father and his identity and what he stood for. So rightfully in her mind or in her idea, wrongfully, she wanted to, you know, remove any of those identities, including my legal name, which was Muhammad. And one day I was walking by the TV and I heard Steve Largent, number 80, come on the news. And I said, Steve sounds like a great name. And so at an early age, I always ran by the name of Steve. And I was never really embraced or taught about my other side of the family and introduced to that. So I was never able to bear the name of Muhammad. But you can only imagine what it's like to have that legal name and go to airports or around after 9/11 and Islamophobia, and how that felt for somebody. So even though I did not grow up in the Muslim culture or identified that, I got a sense of awareness and understanding of what it could mean and feel like to be discriminated against just because of your name. So there was a lot of things that I learned, this talk and the message that I like to get out today is really, you need to get outside of your natural network. In an early age of, you know, trying to find my identity and trying to learn about myself, and a lot of, because of the war and people coming to America and not really embracing a lot of their history or teaching that, you kind of are kind of wandering. And that's what happened. There's a photo of me here attempting to identify with gangs that were in my immediate natural network as a young kid growing up in the South Side. We were living in the living room of a person in these apartments that had a lot of gang members, and that was actually the only role models that we had at the time. I just remember that moment and thinking, like, this is it, this is who I am, and this is my surroundings. And so at a certain point, yes, I was desperately looking for a way out. Walking the streets one day in middle school, I came across a community center. And this community center, basically at the time, there was no, you got to think about the time when a lot of the Southeast Asian families that were coming into Seattle, even though we were diverse, we didn't know how to be inclusive. There was not really a shared activity that we had to come together. Everyone was still kind of coming into that phase of, we don't know, that trust. So I think that's why a lot of people sought just their immediate, network and just stayed there. And so how did I get out? I mean, stumbling upon this community center, uh, the amazing dance moves and the amazing van here. And this kind of just brings me back to my finding of a network that was outside of my natural network that I was able to find and identify with. Basically, breakdancing allowed people from different neighborhoods to come together based on an activity. We all loved hip hop, celebrating 50 years. Happy birthday. But breakdancing taught us to express ourselves. You had to practice certain moves. And it also allowed you to kind of compete and express your emotions in a non-violent manner. Breakdancing gave us an outlet to do that and express ourselves authentically and find each other. We couldn't go to other neighborhoods because of gangs and violence and the differences. And so here it is as an example of young person who didn't have a lot of those positive role models, seeking that and seeking a community. And I didn't fit in one or either side of my ethnicity or the religious backgrounds, and identifying with that. So the message again: shared values, shared activities, shared success. You need to get outside of your natural network. And that's what I did. performing and going out there, and it encouraged me to be in front of people and express myself, and that teamwork, right? Inclusivity is the path towards participation success, and I felt like I was included. So as I'm in middle school, in high school, I see, everyone's getting jobs and it's time to make money because I desperately wanted to figure out a way to get out. I responded to a job ad in high school. I was in my senior year. I didn't have too many role models other than the breakdancing community. And I met somebody by the name of Scott K, rest in peace, who became one of my first coaches. It's a very pivotal moment that almost didn't happen. As you see here, I'm wearing a backward hat. I actually walked into my interview with a backwards hat. I was responding to a job ad, and it was about the mortgage industry and finance. And I wasn't that great of a student. I didn't have a lot of the highest grades at the time. And so here I am taking a chance to learn about this job. And I showed up to the job interview, I guess not according to professional job code at the time. So again, Scott comes out and he's like, "Oh, the training class is full." And I said, "What do you mean the training class is full? I responded to the ad. You told me to come out to Bellevue." And I knew immediately it was probably, okay, it's the look. I look different than what everyone's wearing. I've seen suits and ties and Ferraris and Lambos parked outside. This is interesting. So he said, I said, Scott, I know a lot of people are going to come in here and tell you what they can or can't do. Let me show you. And I was just a very hungry person, young adult, young person going into adulthood and confused, really still. But I had the courage, and that came from that breakdancing community. And so he said, I gave you an objection and you rebuttal that. If you can read this script and if you can be coachable, as he would say, I can teach you a lot of things. And Scott became one of my first mentors. That's actually a picture of John, rest in peace, employee 176. And he was Native American. And, it was amazing just to connect with different people from all walks of life from those days of employee 27 and the mortgage telemarketing days. And that really was a very, really, really pivotal moment in my life. But also at the same time, I dropped out. I dropped out, and I laugh at that now because it was actually Scott that told me to drop out of high school. He called me and he didn't give me the best advice. Sometimes, people that you assume are good could give you bad advice. But we assume that they're good, and, we kind of take the bad advice, assuming that, right? So I dropped out. He told me, "Hey, why are you at school when you could be at work making money?" And at the time, there was a drive-by shooting in my backyard of the apartments. And there was word on the streets that, some Asian gang members did that. And, regardless of whether or not I was affiliated, I fit that look. And so I was, at a place where I was like, I don't feel safe here. I can go make money in Bellevue. I'm learning. I need to get out. And so I moved out. I was dropped out. But I will say this, I went back the next year and actually finished that. Just because they're diverse doesn't mean they're inclusive. And, one of the things that I want to just raise here is that, even the people around your immediate network isn't always going to be the ones that are going to give you the best advice. And so I had to learn that the hard way. And I did go back. I did get my diploma. So as you see there, yes. And I did it in a very tough place. During that time as well, I had friends that were at Harborview because of them, getting in a car accident, reckless driving. I remember I got my actually diploma and my first A by doing a paper on reckless driving and having to experience two of my closest friends in a coma and having to relearn basic human functions, sleeping on people's couches, and trying to finish high school again, was an interesting time in my life. Um, you know what? I just want to take a moment real quick. I'd like to ask, I believe, Elizabeth, if there's Q&A uh, at the end of this slide here before I go any further.
Hey there. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat right now. If folks have anything they want to drop in there at this minute, we can pull them up, or we can kind of wait and see what comes through towards the end.
Thank you. And if there's no questions, it's okay. I'm happy to go into the next slides. And so, oh, there you go. So while I was, graduating high school again, I actually was still expanding with that mortgage firm that we worked with Scott. However, during Scott's last year and departure, the owners decided to shut down the company. And so a few of us decided to build our own company with a $5,000 loan that we got. I also welcomed my first child at the time. It was interesting because the mortgage industry and what Scott taught us, I mean, mind you, there was 26 employees before me that didn't make it, that had probably a lot more experience, and hundreds of others along the way that we trained and coached and hired, and created this community with. We were brave enough to go and create our own company without any knowledge or any role models, even in that first round of entrepreneurship. So after getting my high school diploma, starting a business, working with people that I met through the Kodiak, the mortgage days, it was nice. Most of our peers, had it not been for these opportunities to learn and grow with each other, I don't know what path a lot of us would have gone on. Many of them have gone on and became great leaders in various paths, whether it be pilots or leading tech companies. I myself also, during this interesting time, decided, or also saw, during the social and tech age, there was a lack of representation in the music and entertainment business. I myself felt that, even during the breakdancing days, hip hop gave us an outlet to express ourselves authentically. But there were still only a small handful of Asians, yet alone Southeast Asian rappers and performers, opening up for, major signed singers and rappers on labels, traveling and, being in front of a crowd of thousands. The power of social and outlet and finding a community of shared values of, hip hop and rap music, and also being able to find an activity where you could perform, whether it be at the basement or clubs or on TV, was very exciting and interesting. And, it just goes to show that the power of tech and social, early on, even those days, we were putting and projecting ourselves out there. I felt even more encouraged to keep going and keep representing. Even though I was rapping, I couldn't make it a full-time thing. The major labels wasn't signing Asian rappers, even though I did have my friends, Far East Movement here, that got signed to a major record label and travel the world, and I was, on tour and different events with them. So I'm very proud of that contribution to represent. So I worked during that time, the entrepreneurship, welcoming my first child, going on different tours and expressing myself. I also worked at a mortgage financial tech firm. This was my introduction to the tech industry. or as you could say, I caught the tech bug. You see, in the days of the mortgage industry, I was able to read rate sheets, and be able to help people determine based on your loan to value, your debt to income, your credit score, what various lenders were able to give you and your loan officer the best rates, right? Tech changed the way people did business. Before, this was all fax and came by a fax machine, and so this company out of Gig Harbor asked me if I knew how to read rate sheets, and I did. And so I was able to read the rate sheets and translate them into a proprietary database, and it helped feed thousands of loan officers all over the country. And even though this is coming from somebody that was a super senior that had to go to repeat 12th grade twice and didn't have a good GPA, I was able to help people make the most important decisions of their lives on a $500,000 property asset. And I was able to help translate mortgage lenders with millions of dollars to give, and be able to translate their rate sheets from paper to digital for thousands of loan officers. Again, this is just a lived experience that allowed me to say, well, hold on, I guess I am pretty intelligent and I can think. But the funny story of this probably whole moment of my life was my bagel and coffee story. I remember coming into work, mind you, again, I'm the only minority probably at the time, probably one of the youngest in the industry, in the tech business. And I was working with people that maybe have never worked with somebody like me before. And so for a whole week, about 2 weeks of my time at this tech company, I would see people eat bagels and making, mocha and cappuccinos. And I was like, what's going on? And I met the person who had who had a long-term disability. He got in a motorcycle accident. He happened to hear me writing raps or listening to hip hop music at my cubicle desk when I was translating these rate sheets. And we had a common interest. And he told me one day, Tyler said, how come I said, how come everyone, I told Tyler, I said, how come everyone here eats bagels and coffee every morning? He's like, huh? What do you mean, Steve? You could open up the fridge and have whatever you want. They didn't tell you. I was like, no. They're like, these are free. The company provides it. I was like, they do? It's like, I'm not used to that. I'm not used to being provided perks and benefits and, having this environment that made you feel valued, where they're like, hey, you don't got to worry about budgeting and your meal and going hungry. We got you, at least for breakfast. And so I thought the world of it. And I caught the tech bug and I wanted to stay into tech. So, after this Lion era, and what I learned, and shout out to Tyler as well, for giving me that the bagels and coffee, instructions on what to do. But after that, I went to a career fair. After the Lion Mortgage Technology Source days of me doing this for about 2.5 years, I wanted to stay in tech, but because I didn't have a degree in tech, I was counted out again, even though I knew I had the experience. So I went to a career fair with my roommate at the time, and at that point, it was kind of like, how do I stay in tech? What do I do? So I ended up staying in tech, but in telecom side of it actually. I show this award here because it actually brings me back great memories and the story of Betsy. Betsy was somebody there that was supposed to help account consultants like myself continue to learn, because I remember early on my first 2 weeks of working at this telecom company, they said, if you ever come in here and leave without, leaving knowing that you learned something new, then you didn't really do anything. Like, there's not a day that's going to go by that you won't walk out here and saying, I didn't know that and I learned it today. So I got made fun of in some ways of getting that extra help. I came from an environment where that was encouraged. That was what made us successful, was to be coachable and learning and sharing with each other. Here in this new environment, um, you know, I guess it was encouraged, but at the same time, you kind of get bullied into feeling less because you're getting help. But shout outs to, the lifelong learning and being coachable, because it allowed me to become the account consultant of the year at the time. And so I pay homage to that model of really just coachable and learning and mentorship, and look at what it got. Um, Again, still wanted to stay into tech when the telecom companies went through mergers and acquisitions and different layoffs, regardless of who you were or how great you were. It was just part of the M&A. So somebody said you should get into recruiting, and I said, recruiting? What do I know about recruiting? No thanks. Uh, they told me, hey, I do this in my Scooby-Doo pajamas, and I'm working for 2 clients. I said, sign me up, because again, it was the environment. I was like, wait, that sounds like a cool environment. Work remote, Scooby-Doo pajamas. You still get to work in tech in some sort of way, because it was consulting and recruiting for a tech agency. So here I was again, on yachts, even started rocking bow ties. uh, if I wanted to rock a hat backwards, I probably could. And of course, in the tech and agency world in these days, there was an unlimited amount of food and events. But, from food bank, welfare, housing, to being around multimillionaires and living this superstar business life and having access to suites and spending cards, I still felt underrepresented. I still felt in a way alone. I didn't have people that had this, maybe the shared values. I didn't attend activities that were more aligned to communities that I wanted to see represented, or cultures even, and celebrations that were not occurring. And it was interesting. And so I said, during this time, there was a science, technology, engineering, math, workforce development, advocacy, and I helped contribute to this as well, because we were going around being ambassadors of, hey, championing for more women and, BIPOC people to get into these paths, because there's a huge connect between jobs and economic development, and access to those that don't. And even further, I realized, wow, there's actually a community. And oh, wow, there's even people there in that picture that were from the Employee 27 mortgage days. Because when I started having access to privilege, I shared it. And that's what was important to me, was to share that access. And we met people from all parts of the country that were into tech, that, were people of color. And I said, wow, this calls for a celebration, because for all of us to get together at this historic moment, why not? And so that's kind of like the picture in the background, to be able to work with companies that were fast growing and consulting some of the Fortune 50 companies out there. It was nice to see other people that looked like me and represented and cared about not only science, technology, engineering, and math, but the community as well, diversity, equity, and inclusion in and outside of companies. So that brought me on to other things, such as the Hack Diversity Community Learning Series that we put together. The company that we built, SM Diversity, saw, and this kind of helped my second round of entrepreneurship after all the consulting, is because, I said, wow, recruiting, and it is what it is. And, 70% of jobs were by referrals. Well, the referrals were by people that were already in places of privilege and power and position, and the majority. And I said, well, let's make it different. Let's hack it. Let's disrupt it. Let's create better practices. And so during my time, one of the most successful things that I felt we did was this community learning series called the Hack Diversity, where we were taking people from corporate, community leaders, and kind of convening around this shared value of we believe in a more diverse, equitable, inclusive organization, and it's not happening. And so how do we make that happen? And it starts with, sharing of information, coachability, lifelong learning, and it allowed people to engage in this. And a lot of the people were able to take things home that they would have never got access or exposure to from different community leaders, all the way to different Fortune 100, to the public sectors and government officials, as far as, what are you doing today? What are some of the best practices? What are you not doing great at today? And sharing that and co-studying. And so it led to, years and years of us doing this Hack Diversity event. And this is one of the photos, and really glad to have people like Wands, who's a Grammy awarded winner, keynote even, and make a special appearance because of that shared, values, the shared activity that we put together, and celebrating our shared success of doing so. By doing that, I was able to get featured on Seattle Times. Also got featured on Seattle Magazine as top DEI influencer, along with like Ijuma Ulo and Robin DiAngelo, who are best-selling authors as well and leaders. And speaking of the dropout and always being told that you feel the professional bias of, oh, you don't have a paper to show it, even though you have that experience. So I asked for, advice from my mentors as well, and they said to check out the Cornell University Strategic Human Resource Leadership Program. And that's what I did as I was welcoming my second child as well, was to continuously learn and get outside of my comfort and natural network as well, to continue learning. So that was great. And then I got on to the University of Washington consulting program. And I felt so compelled by the fact that, I could get my teammates to drop in instead of dropping out. I'm going to do that. And so I sent some of our employees and colleagues and consultants to this program and paid for it as well, because I knew that some of them would have not had access or that opportunity to do so. And so I wanted to pay that forward and give back and do that. And that also led me to other amazing things, such as, a moment with NBC. And, it was just completely wild just to see that I'm being asked to share my identity and my journey, and during the time of Stop Asian Hate, and being represented. I mean, I don't know how many other Southeast Asian representatives have been able to get on these platforms, and I hope that we continue to make it the new norm to allow more opportunities and access for people to go and share those. Speaking of sharing, one of my lifelong dreams was to have an idea that's worth sharing, and I did that. Wow, this is the TEDx University of Washington, and that's exactly what it was about. Was, do you have an idea worth sharing? And I sure did. Just to kind of think about this, I mean, it was something that was really near and dear to me, considering, hearing my story of what is it, that, I thought about, and I kept on thinking, I didn't ever really felt safe, not physically, but, psychologically, mentally. And I was studying under a PhD psychologist who kind of talked to me about psychological safety. And upon more and more research, I found that over 70-80% of our workers and workforce feel disengaged in the workplace and don't feel safe enough to show their identities, and a lot of covering and code switching, because a lot of it was used against us. And so my idea is worth sharing is that, inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was that there's never a wrong time to start doing the right thing. And, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Actually, what people don't realize is was championing for more equality and equity as it pertains to jobs and opportunities. I faced another challenge. Let's see here. Sorry. After this, you think that everything was great. I had ideas worth sharing. I'm being featured on different magazines. And then I got scammed. It was a very interesting time. I was investing into multiple ideas and other entrepreneurs, and it was successful. We had a lot of successful businesses. I remembering, disrupting different industries with different technology partners and helping pay equity. A lot of it was in different industries that I had to learn about. And so I was in this mode of, I'm going to be an investor. I'm going to change more entrepreneurial lives and give more access and people that believe in this. One of those companies I invested in had a person who we make bad hires, and they manage projects and tick off with our money and our potential profits. It hurt me pretty bad, to the point where I went to go and consult for a billionaire directly. And that was another interesting moment during this time, because during this time as well was COVID. I lost my taste and smell. I remember Stop Asian Hate. I remember unrest in the city. There was a lot of divide in the public. Black Lives Matter, the murder of George Floyd. I felt as if we all shared a common struggle in a strange time. And the thing about it is, to work for a billionaire every day and consult with them during this time was interesting. It taught me a lot about more of just the reassurance of that I needed to continue on this path that I was going down and get back to what it was, even though I was scammed financially. I also went through a divorce. We're great co-parents, and we have a great relationship, but that was a interesting time to go through. And I think I wanted to share this with everyone, because it's not always like, hey, here, I'm healed, I'm better, I'm so successful. But no, it's always an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to learn, and it could be at any given moment. Unexpected moments. In the picture of where you saw me with my hat backwards with employee 176 was one of my best friends since the mortgage finance days. And, during the COVID lockdowns, he would help. And since he was door dashing and doing deliveries, help get groceries for me because of the risks of going outside at the time. So, all of that, and to, bury somebody that was near and dear to me and of trust that, I've earned, was a very, very strange time. But it felt good. And what I mean by that is I survived in some ways, and it felt good to get through that and learn and be able to share that. I'm gonna take a pause here before I kind of finish this off. But out of curiosity, if you're out there and you could put it on the chat window, just by chatting yes, how many people felt that they've gained something really valuable from me sharing this story? The best way that you can pay it forward is if you just take 2 minutes, fill out a very, very quick survey. Matter of fact, we had the youth and the Portland Youth Unity event fill this out, and thank you for giving me my first A. And I didn't pay anyone. All you have to do is take out your phone, open up your camera, scan this QR code there, and then you put the code SMD and complete the survey. I want to know what you liked about this presentation so far, so I could do more of it. And I want you to even help me make it better. I'm on a mission to get this message of Employee 27, get out, and how to get outside of your natural network through shared values, shared activities, and shared success. I see, the vision of diversity, equity, inclusion as a new norm. And it's folks like you that give the feedback, that make sure that I can continue to do that. So take 2 minutes, scan the QR code, please. Finish the survey, chat done or yes whenever you have completed. And I have one final thought before we go.
I can never view you as my equal. Fuck, I want to hear your CD phone.
Yes, and shout outs to some of the folks that are dropping in. Thank you, Naomi, Aiden, Estella, Christopher, Stephanie, Melissa. Thank you.
Stuff in this game, I've been making deals. Get your lawyer on the phone, we can make it real. I got checks and balance, I flex dramatic.
1 minute remaining.
See on my rap, disrespect the savage. I make one phone call and the rest get handed. It's just another front step with candles. No message from the set, we accept your challenge.
The marathon continues. 15 seconds. Thank you. You need to get outside of your natural network. Thank you again, everyone, for sharing that. And again, I wanted to leave you with a couple more things. Nipsey, one of the things that I remember was in a clip where Nipsey said, "Would you rather be at war with yourself, but at peace with the world, or would you rather be at war with the world, but at peace with yourself?" I'd rather be at peace with myself and in war with the world. Not saying to do that, but it just goes to show you need to get outside of your natural network and go and make peace with yourself and that fulfillment. So, as you remember, I was talking about how during that time and all these things that were happening, I wanted to find a community still. And because of the lockdowns and we weren't able to do the hacks, we discovered other ways to find people with shared values and create another shared activity and celebrate the shared outcome. We had 10,000 members organically join our clubhouse. Some of y'all might remember it, but it kind of reminds me of like the MySpace days of when we were trying to reach out for music and everything. We had even Elon and Zuck, not on my clubhouse, but on Clubhouse. So that tells you that even, some of the greatest minds were looking for the same thing to chat it up during that time. It was probably just our human nature to connect with other humans. And it was, like I said, a strange time for a lot of people that we all shared collectively. We also created a group called Lao Clubhouse, which got a lot of us talking to people in Laos and Thailand and in parts of Asia where we would, come together to share music, food, jokes, and just kind of what are you doing during the lockdown? Even sending meals back to our homeland to support people that didn't have access to food during that time. And so we were like, we can't wait to celebrate in person one day. And so we were talking about, wow, we're not being represented again in music. I happen to remember that, in entertainment, and our food's not being shown. And it's like, wouldn't it be awesome if we got together and took those ideas and brought it out to the world? So here's a result of when you take people's ideas and sharing their values and creating another activity, what the successful outcomes can be like. So I give you Sabai Fest, the first Southeast Asian festival. 10,000 members total over 2 days. It was sold out, and representation from all 50 states. The first ever U.S. trip for the Laos and Thailand artists who headlined the shows and the concerts. The U.S. Embassy Vientiane, Laos, even reposted and celebrated the historic moment. I'm still entrepreneuring. I'm still trying to get out of my natural network so I can make a bigger impact. And this is what I learned from Sabai Fest. Representation matters. So get out.
I miss you all the time, baby. คิดฮอดทุกยาม yeah missing you all day all night คิดฮอดเจ้าหลายเด้อลุกขึ้นคอยยังฝันเห็นเจ้าข้างกาย You are on my mind all day all night I miss you all the time, baby. คิดฮอดทุกยาม yeah missing you all day all night คิดฮอดเจ้าหลายเด้อลุกขึ้นคอยยังฝันเห็นเจ้าข้างกาย You are on my mind all day all night all day all night I want to see only waiting for you oh my God I'll let you go I'm the one to want you I want to
Represent. Get out. My name is Stephen Matley, and the one message that I wanted to continue to drive as we all adjourn is to get out of your natural immediate network and do it through shared values, shared activities, shared success, because representation matters. Peace.
Hey, Stephen, are you hearing me okay?
Thank you. Yes.
Awesome. Amazing presentation. You can look in the chat and see that people are giving you so much love and appreciation. And just thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your energy. You're coming out as like a true icon of that growth mindset and being a lifelong learner. So thanks for that inspiration. We have questions for you. Lots of questions. You ready to jump in?
Thank you. I love it. Thank you.
All right. So our first question is, what advice would you give someone that struggles with being disconnected from their culture and identity? We're going easy, light.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm empathetic to that because I shared that same struggle, and it was hip hop and rap music that was inclusive to my differences. I say this in an interesting way. It's like I had to become the father that I didn't have. And so when it comes to cultural identity, is maybe sometimes it's you that is to evolve the culture. Because even rooted in our history, there's a lot of toxicity that was never audited. And so there's good and bad in all of it. And I hope, I guess I share the quote from Bruce Lee that I still carry is, take what is useful, discard what is useless, add, and essentially make it your own.
Thank you. Next easy question for you. Can you shed some light on the effects of the model minority term and how this has affected the Asian community? I feel this term could have put immense pressure on the Asian youth and affected their mental health.
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of, the whole model minority. I will say that one thing that isn't discussed a lot is, because of survival, because of the war, especially in Southeast Asian communities, things that weren't rooted into you making a living and surviving, because of the trauma of what had happened and occurred to a lot of our parents, was that you can't get into singing, you can't get into creative, you can't get into something that we don't know or that's not encouraged. But I know that a lot of the public thinks that, because of us being boxed into this Asian category, and that the public, there's history and rooted in the model minority myth as well, is that during the time, there was the need to perceive allyship with certain groups, even though, black churches and people are putting on their Sunday's best. What one group was discriminated against and what one group wasn't, was a very interesting time when you kind of like, maybe this is another conversation, but I feel like when it comes to the model minority, there's a lot that's still not being discussed as terms of like the difference in ethnicities and the struggles and also the divide, and some of the biases that still happen. So, as much as the public perceives that, I still consider that a myth. And I think that the history rooted of that intent of that, model minority myth and the bamboo ceiling is that, there's still so much conversation that's not happening. And so I feel like we get grouped up, Asian and, y'all are the model minority when really, we, Lao, Cambodian, Vietnamese weren't always perceived that way. So thank you. And the data doesn't show that either.
We have about 1 minute for one more question, and again, an easy one for you. But we have somebody who says, "Thank you for sharing. You're incredibly resilient. What advice/encouragement do you have for someone who's trying to move forward, but their circumstances are preventing them from upward mobility?"
Yeah, I definitely want to drive it home that I don't want to. I don't want to come ever across in any of my talks about meritocracy. Yes, I was brought up in those environments, like the movie Boiler Room of the dog eat dog world. You gotta pull yourself up by your own, and be resilient. And if you work hard, those things can happen. Yes, I get that part, but I also am not going to ignore that there are, systemic oppressions and systems that are not equitable today that still aren't being audited for us to have a deeper conversation in that. But I guess that's probably to encourage more people to represent even in government and into politics, is to change that. Because, I'm not, again, I don't want to preach merit or hard work, because I think that that's kind of the default that people do, but also that's also something that I think that like the majority of people that are in a position of privilege and power will utilize to say, well, you could be like this too if you work hard. I don't believe in that. I do believe that there are circumstances and situations that we all go through, and it's an individual basis, but it's something that I think that we are still trying to create better practices. So the work isn't done, and there's not a one way of doing it. So one thing for you to be resilient is to to continue to do the research, continue to give yourself more information and protect your mental armor during these times. And if you can't, find your community that can help support that. So protect your mental armor, but also make sure and measure that you have the mental capacity to be able to bear the burden of a lot of things. So I'll just basically wrap that up by saying that, you know, I'm very aware that a lot of these circumstances and situations still happen for people. And, you know, I can sit here and say, go do it and give you a pep talk. I'm here to share what I did, how I did it. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say that it was easy or that there hasn't been any trauma or any triggers or any healing that I still have to go through, right? So I think that's a self-reflection of you and an assessment of your situation, and hopefully that you provide yourself with enough research and information to go find your communities of helpers and people that want to support. Thank you.